I'm doing this video because I think that this is highly important that it be brought to the public's attention. I start with the statement that the criminal justice system is a joke when your own defense attorney fucks you. And I mean to the point of being instrumental in the decision to put you to death. Your own defense attorney. In this particular clip, you have a man down here in Texas that did commit some heinous crimes. He killed 3 people. He was found guilty, and during the sentencing phase, his own defense attorney called a psychologist to the stand to testify supposedly in behalf of Mr. Buck, but turned around and made a highly prejudicial, racialized statement that said that black people are more prone to be dangerous than white people. Basically said because he's black, he's prone to commit serious, harmful crimes. That just in itself is racist, period. There's no evidence to prove that. Only in the minds of certain individuals who believe a lot of these white supremacist blogs like Breitbart that post all these bullshit statistics and stories, only in the minds of the people that read those things and believe them is that true. Anyway, here's a clip from the Roland Martin show regarding Duane Buck case, and it is in front of the Supreme Court. As you should be aware, there are only 8 justices on the Supreme Court, so any decision that is rendered must be a 5-3 decision in order to overturn the decision of a lower court. Obviously, right now at 4-4, you have to basically have overwhelming evidence or an overwhelming argument to convince one of the 4 conservative judges to side with the other 4 progressive or liberal judges, if in fact the liberal judges all vote in favor of this man. Here we go.
Folks, Duane Buck is fighting his case at the U.S. Supreme Court. He is a Texas inmate. He's trying to stay alive after shocking testimony was used to sway jurors in Houston to sentence him to death. Here's what happened. Duane Buck was sentenced to die for the 1995 shooting death of his ex-girlfriend and her friend. He also shot his stepsister, but she survived. Buck's appeal centers on the statements from the prosecution's psychologist. The expert testified Buck was more likely to be dangerous in the future because he's black. But yesterday, majority of the justices, as they argued this case before the Supreme Court, expressed concern that Buck's own defense lawyer, not the prosecutors, introduced the racially charged testimony during his trial. A decision is expected sometime before June, or actually in late June. Joining me now in New York City, Angel Harris, the Assistant Counsel for the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Of course, our panel, Kristen Clark, General Caldwell, Tiffany Lofton as well. Angel, this is strange. So the defense lawyer played this role? The defense lawyer?
That's correct. So they hired a psychologist who said that Mr. Buck, due to the fact that he was black, was more likely to commit a violent crime in the future. And the reason why this is significant is because in order to have a death sentence in Texas, you have to prove future dangerousness. And with that testimony, it not only introduced racial bias, but it also validated the racialized fear of violence. As we know, a lot of people view Black men and Black people in general through a lens of violence. And having an expert validate that racial claim is very dangerous and problematic. And the court emphasized that yesterday. Everyone in the courtroom recognized the fact that this was a problem and that it was highly prejudicial for Mr. Buck. And for over a century, the United States Supreme Court has emphasized that racial bias, when introduced into a criminal case, is unacceptable and prejudicial to a defendant. And Mr. Buck is just asking for the opportunity to have a non-bias sentencing hearing. And you know, it's time to really eradicate racial bias in the criminal justice system, and the court has an opportunity to do that in Mr. Buck's case.
Christian, you were in the courtroom yesterday, described listening to the justices question the attorneys on both sides.
This is probably one of the most important civil rights cases to go before the court this term. We have a life that hangs in the balance here. As I sat there in the courtroom listening to the justices, I think all of them were deeply concerned about, you know, Justice Alito, one of the most conservative justices on the court, said this is truly bizarre that you would have an expert say that because this man is Black, he's likely to pose a danger to the public in the future. Justice Roberts asked the attorney from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Christina Sworn, several times, well, how do you want to win this case? So I think the court is poised to do the right thing. The big takeaway from this case is that race continues to infect every level of our criminal justice system. We're not just talking about street level stops, we're talking about all the way down to what happens when sentencing decisions are made about whether you impose life or death. And here you had racialized evidence presented to a jury that, as Ms. Sorens put it, put the thumb on death's scale and basically, pushed this jury to decide that they could not exercise mercy here and give this man life and look at the individual facts about him. But merely because he is a Black man, he must pose a danger to society, leaving them no choice than to issue the death penalty here. Hugely important case.
Did the only African American on the Supreme Court say anything?
He was silent as usual, and I'll tell you the other unusual.
Why does that not surprise me or anybody else?
Thing, that ninth seat on the court, they used to have a black drape over it. It's now gone, right? So a life and death case sits with 8 justices. And so the idea that we might end up with a 4-4 tie here and that a man could be executed based on the racist testimony that was placed before this jury that decided to impose death puts me in a very uncomfortable position.
Angel, if the court rules in favor of Buck, is a new trial ordered, or do they simply vacate the death penalty?
So one of the things that could happen is Mr. Buck would have a new sentencing hearing. So the entire trial wouldn't be done over. It would just be the sentencing hearing. So there would be an opportunity to present information on Mr. Buck's behalf, just related solely to the sentence.
So he was convicted of the crimes, but the issue here was in the sentencing phase.
Yes, that's correct. So what's at issue now is Mr. Buck's death sentence. So that's what would be redone if he is given relief in this case. It would deal specifically with just the sentencing.
All right then, Angel, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
All right, so I got a feeling that this is probably gonna come down to a 5-3 or a 6-2 decision in order to grant this man a new sentencing hearing. I gotta tell you for sure that Clarence Thomas is gonna be one of the 2 that doesn't want to give it to him. But this is super important as far as I'm concerned, because it just further demonstrates how the criminal justice system and the judicial system tends to be so biased against people of color and specifically Black people. And as was stated earlier in this clip, something definitely needs to be done.